Hi everybody. So we are back on to the sampler bouquet. We are going to continue on with the on-point layout. So we have already posted the videos for the square quilted butterfly blocks, and we have already posted the video for the corner blocks that are just quilted with no butterflies. So if you haven't made those yet, I would recommend going and watching those videos and getting those made. You don't have to do them in any particular order, but if you're wanting to follow the series, that's where I would start. So now we are going to be moving on to what they call the bottom butterfly blocks. So if you look in your instructions for the on-point layout, it is called the cube BRDR BFLY bottom. So just for the quilted border butterfly bottom blocks. So as you can see here, we're going to make a grand total of 3 of these. So we made 4 of these, 20 of these, and now we're going to make 3 of these. You can fit 2 to a hooping depending on your largest hoop size and depending on what size block you're making. So if you're making the 5-inch blocks, it's going to be 4.9 by 4.9. And if you are making the 8-inch blocks, they're going to be 7.75 by 7.75. So those are just your 2 different sizes. I always make notes of what threads I'm using. So I am using through both of them the Exquisite ES 165 for my quilting, and the 392 is what I have quilted all of my butterflies with. So I have one finished here. It turned out really cute. So this one has nice open butterfly wings, and you can tell the difference between which one is considered the bottom and which one is considered the top because the angle rotation on each of these. So we're going to do 2 in a hooping. Well, we're going to stitch 1 out together, but I'm going to show you how we're going to fit 2 in a hoop. Now let's talk about getting our fabrics together. So I have been using batting and no-show mesh stabilizer as opposed to using battleizer. Nothing against the battleizer product, it's great. I just have what I currently have, and this is a great way for me to bust through a bunch of my leftover squares. So let's talk about what we're going to need to cut. So right here we're going to refer to, wrong side, our cutting instructions. So when we're talking about the bottom, top, left, and right butterfly blocks, we're going to cut all of those at the same exact time, and it will give you the silhouette of each one. We are going to cut a grand total of 7 squares. So depending on the size that you're doing, you're either going to cut them 6.5 square or you're going to cut them 10 inches square. And I do like to cut mine a 1/2 inch to 1 full inch larger. And then we are going to cut these into HSTs. And I would just recommend going and cutting all of those together so you have them ready to go. Now, if you are doing the optional back, you will also need to do the same thing again for a total of 14 out of whatever your background fabric is. If you're adding the optional bottom, instead of 7, you'll have 14. So all you're going to do is you're going to cut your squares, and then we are going to slice them in half from corner to corner. Now you can see one of these is slightly larger than the other, probably because I cut 1 an inch and maybe 1.5 inch larger, maybe 1 to size, who knows. But they're all going to work out just fine. Now, if you were doing the optional wool, or if you're doing like I am, I will cut my batting piece, we'll cut the square, and then we'll just slice it in half as well. So if you're doing the optional wool, or if you are using the 100% cotton or the 80-20 cotton poly blend battings, you are going to cut them in the same exact fashion. It does describe that here in the optional wool, how that you should go that, but the cutting instructions here pretty much tell you exactly what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be doing that for all the bottoms, the top, the left, and the right butterfly blocks, which, if I flip my instructions over, we can see here. So it's going to be the same size for all of these. So today we're making these 3, and then we're going to come and we're going to make 3 of these and 4 of these. So we'll get to those later on. So I've got all of my stuff ready to go. I've got my battings, I've got my fabrics, I've got my threads. So we're just going to pivot over here real fast and we're going to get started. So bear with me as I turn around so we can create this beautiful quilted butterfly half square triangle. So depending on the size of the butterfly block that you're doing and how big your embroidery hoop is, you should be able to fit 2. So here I have 2 blocks, and it does go all the way out to the parameters. Now, if you have a slightly smaller block, what I would recommend doing, or not a slightly smaller block, a slightly smaller hoop, is you can edit this and you can rotate it to where they can kind of come closer together, and you can bring them over top near one another if you need to fit them in a smaller hoop size. So see how I made that basically fit in like an 8 by 8 size? So if I wanted to use my 10 5/8 by 10 5/8 hoop on the Avenir, I could do that as well. But we're not doing that today. I have on my 10 5/8 by 16-inch hoop, and that's what I'm going to use today, or my 18-inch hoop, and that's what I'm going to use today. Now, I just wanted to kind of show you that, and you can also just pull up the design and make a copy of it. And if you have a Brother machine that has this option, you can go into your layout settings and you can turn on your color sort feature. So see right here, it's going to do it 1 block, but notice when I turn on my color sort, it's going to start doing it where it would do each step of both blocks at the same time. So that's less color changes for you, less steps to go through. I'm going to not do that today, just for the sole fact that I want us to be able to stitch one out together. And if you do that, I just want you to be aware that you are going to have to really watch your steps. These blocks are simple enough that I don't think you're going to get confused, but it does mess with the number layout. So if you're using battleizer, go ahead and have your battleizer hooped. If you are using no-show mesh and then your leftover battings, go ahead and have your stabilizer hooped, have your designs pulled up, get to this point, and we'll get going. Now you'll notice I'm doing 2 in a hoop. I only have 2 color changes. It's only going to take not even 20 minutes, and there's just over 10,000 stitches. So this is really fast, really simple, really easy. So if you're using the battleizer or the no-show mesh, you're going to sew machine stitch step 1. We're going to lower our foot, we're going to hit start, and it is going to stitch the first part of the design. Oh, my needle came unthreaded on me. Bear with me. Okay, success. Oh, excuse me. So we're going to stitch that directly onto the stabilizer. And again, if you're using battleizer, you're just going to stitch that directly onto your battleizer. Now, if you are doing the optional wool, you are going to do machine stitch step 2. If you are not doing the optional wool that we would lay out here, you're not going to do machine stitch step 2, no matter if you're using the battleizer or the method that I'm using. But what I am going to do is I am going to go back and I'm going to repeat machine stitch step 1. Why? Because now I know where the placement is going to go, and that's especially important to me with a lot of the blocks. We don't have to worry about it. We can just kind of hover it. But where I'm doing 2 in a hooping, I really need to watch it. So I now know where it's going to go. I'm going to lay my batting down, and I'm going to let it stitch it down just with this top stitch. Now, if you wanted to do step 2 where you did the zigzag stitch, you can do that. I just feel like it's unnecessarily heavy. But it's great for the wool because you're going to be going through multiple layers of batting if you so choose to do that, whether it be the battleizer. Starting to get slipped out under my foot. Whether it be the battleizer or whether you be using the 100% cotton batting like I am. But it does do a very heavy zigzag. Well, not a super heavy, but it does do a zigzag stitch. And we are going to just skip over that step only if you are not using the wool batting, which I am not. So I'm going to lay down my piece of fabric, my half square triangle background piece, and we're going to sew that down with machine stitch step 3. And that is going to be your background, and we are still just using our background color for this. Now they do recommend that you could put your Vanish light thread in the bobbin and the needle just so you can see the stitch to trim, but then your basting stitch can come out. I do not use Vanish light very often. It is a great little product if you do so choose to use it. Now we're going to quilt. This is going to be machine stitch step 4, and it's going to quilt it out for me. So this is going to be, this and stitching your butterfly are going to be the 2 most lengthy steps. It doesn't take a ton of time. They go, like I said, very, very quickly. It's just going to quilt, and it's actually going to leave the butterfly silhouette where the butterfly is going to be stitched out here in a minute, a little hollow. And I will tell you, I may have mentioned this in some of the other video that we did with the butterflies already. It gets kind of puckery looking, almost like but by the time you stitch the butterfly, it all kind of pulls in nice and tight. It's nothing you really have to worry about. One thing that I didn't mention thus far is that if you are doing the optional quilting piece of fabric on the back, is that you would have needed to take your hoop off the machine. You would have needed to flip your hoop over to the back. You would have centered a fabric piece cut to the same size over top of all the outside edges. You would have taped it down, and you would have returned the hoop to the machine before you began sewing. You would also have put in a different color bobbin if you so chose to do it in the same color on the back. I am not doing that. I'm not doing the quilt as you go method. I am going to add an optional, I'm doing the option where we add our back as a whole cloth piece and stitch in the ditch when the entire project is done. Now again, I'm also going to mention that this is for the on point layout with the butterflies. So if you are choosing to not do this one and you're perhaps doing the 4-patch layout, all of these butterfly block videos are not necessary for you to make. So just keep that in mind. So like right here, you can kind of see where it didn't make the full feather curve all the way around here. It kind of scooped backward because it's leaving these spaces hollow for the butterfly here in a minute. So whatever color you're stitching your butterflies in, I keep it consistent and use the same color through the whole thing. It just makes my life a little easier. You can do different colors if you wanted to create like a cool rainbow effect, or maybe you're a teal girl, whatever you're into. But I like this nice, pretty, bright purple. And again, my quilting color number is ES165. That is an Exquisite brand thread. And it is a 40-way embroidery thread. And it's 100% polyester. For the butterflies, I'm going to be using Exquisite thread as well. It is still a 40-weight poly. And I'm using color number ES392, which I believe is just standard purple. But it's very lovely and it stitches out great on the butterflies. Now, if you did the optional wool, you may have wanted to go back and trim. So if you have a lot of excess overhang, I would recommend going back and trimming, but we don't really have any overhang here. So there's nothing really for me to go back and trim away. So now that it has done all of my quilting, I'm just going to cut my threads real quick. Oops, sorry, I'm trying not to get my arm in the way of the camera. It's just hard sometimes. And I'm going to switch over to my purple thread real fast. So just bear with me for a hot second. Again, it's 392 is the color number if you like what I'm using. Okay, and then you're just going to thread it up and you're going to start it. And this is going to be machine stitch step 5. And that's going to stitch out your butterflies. And it goes really well. So it looks a little puckery in the center right now where it does the quilting ahead of time. But I swear by the time it's done, you don't even notice that. It does such a beautiful heavy stitch that it all just kind of smooths itself out. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, I don't know if I necessarily want to do the butterfly block before. Now you can switch the quilting layout. Like if you don't want the butterfly block to be shown on the back side, you could skip to step 5, then sew the quilting. It may pull the design a little bit, so keep that in mind. But if you don't want the butterfly to show on the back side, if you're doing the optional additional back, I would probably skip to step 5 and then go back and do step 4 if I just wanted to see the quilting, because that is pretty heavy. The pattern does give you a recommendation here in step 5. They talk all about it, what to do. I personally would probably skip to step 5, sew the butterfly out, then add the optional backing and change my bobbin color. But that is entirely at your discretion. And who knows, it could look really cute on the back side having that butterfly stitched out. So it's going to do the silhouette of the butterfly first and foremost. So you can see it's got this really nice heavy outline stitch all the way around it. And then it's going to do just like it did in the other butterfly blocks. It's going to create a really nice satin stitch on the end of the antennae of the butterfly. And then the body of the butterfly is going to have this really cool kind of pattern body through it that's going to create like almost a cross weave effect. So I do like that. And I think the fact that the silhouette stitches out first creates a little more smoothness in the center of it. So if you haven't watched the first video in a while, I do want to show the center of the body again of the finished block. So we're just, while that's finishing stitching out, let's just give that a gander again. So this is the really nice, pretty body that it does on it. I really like the little cross pattern interchange. And I do like the nice little heavy satin stitch that it does there. And this nice heavy bean stitch all the way around. But these are really nice, beautiful quilted blocks. And they stitch out on the back side beautifully as well. Now I know this isn't like with the back. This is just with embroidery bobbin thread. But it still does a nice stitch out on both sides. And I would recommend having a few full bobbins of whatever you're working with on hand. So I am just using regular 60-weight embroidery bobbin thread for this because I am not doing the options where I need to change my threads on the back side. But if no matter what you're doing, I recommend having a couple of full bobbins of each. So if you're doing the quilting option, go ahead and have 2 bobbins of that ready. If you're putting the vanished lot in there, have a full bobbin of it. And especially if you're doing it with the method that I'm using, where I'm just going to add the backing as I'm done, have about 4 bobbins pre-wound with your embroidery bobbin thread ready to go, because it does just save you the time of having to wind those later or dig them out. So I've got like 4 up here on my machine ready to go. We're also, as you can see, we're stitching a few of them out over there on our Janome CM17 because it also has a really nice big hoop, just like the Brother Avenir does. And so it's just really nice to have that. And we've got bobbins ready to go on both of them. So we're getting near to the end of this particular one. And so if you like to do it where you can see like the steps correlate, where you do one, then one here, you don't have to turn on your color sort feature if your machine has that as an option. But I typically do. That's just my personal preference, but it is entirely up to you what you like to do. I just like to point out a few little extra things that you guys may find useful as you sew. But we are almost done. Now, I do recommend continuing to trim the same way consistently. So if you're using the trimmer by George ruler, continue to use your trimmer by George. If you're trimming like the pattern recommends, where at the 1/4 of an inch seam all the way around, continue using a 1/4 of an inch. If you like a slightly bigger seam allowance at a 1/2 an inch, continue to do that. Either of those are going to be fine. Just make sure you're keeping it consistent and you are reducing the bulk of your batting out of your way. So that is it, my friends. We would go ahead and stitch 2 more of those, and then you will end up with these beautiful bottom butterfly blocks. So you need 3 of these, and then we'll come back here in just a little bit and we'll do the top ones. So we hope to see you for that one. I hope you're enjoying this series of our Hoop Sisters sampler bouquet. And again, this is for the on point layout, not the 4 patch. All right, until next time, guys. Bye-bye.